Situation Room, the only way to start your
mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning. At 8 minutes after 9 o'clock, into the final hour of the Situation Room this morning, Tuesday, the 13th of May. And as we get into other things that we need to talk about today, our final guest for this hour, already seated in the hot seat of the Situation Room. Where are you tuned in around the country on radio and in the region and indeed across the world? And our live streams are up on Facebook, on YouTube and on X. And our audience on KTN. So everybody are getting into our final hour of this conversation, rather of this show this morning. And we're having a conversation with Dr. Rogers Otieno Odhiambo, who's an advocate of the High Court and a law lecturer at the African Nazarene University. He's here with us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Odhiambo.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you.
You're in the hot seat of the Situation Room.
I know.
Matters arising here and there require that we have conversations, which is necessary to do every now and then. And we want to welcome you to the Situation Room with today's proverb. As you may know, C.T. Muga is not here. But when he does go around the African continent, it is possible that what he's doing currently is doing his collection around the continent. And we'll see what he comes back with. But in the meantime, he's left us with proverbs that come from a country that had a man at the helm of the leadership who perhaps delivered a blueprint for African unity, but was not allowed to live it out. What country do you think this might be?
This must be Libya.
Ah, fantastic. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the proverb for today, if you'll do us the favor of interpreting it according to you, is walk as far as you can in sandals before you get good shoes. Walk a long way, rather, in sandals before you get good shoes.
Okay.
What do you make of that?
I think I just want to think of hard work, that success takes time. But you've got to work for it. You've got to do something in order to get somewhere. That's what I could possibly think about it. Yes.
Oh, there you go. Siti always says the good thing about an opinion, or rather an interpretation of opinion, is that you can never be wrong.
You're wrong with it.
Because it is just that, your opinion.
Okay.
All right. So we're getting into a conversation around ending impunity and corruption. Just when we say that thing and people will say it is impossible. It is impossible to end it. Forget about it. Let's talk about something else. But let's look at it from a rule of law perspective when it comes to holding and making people accountable to the law. There is a feeling, whether it is said, whether it is overt, whether it is just believed or, conceptualized, that nobody can hold you down to the law. A lot of people do feel that once something comes, we will deal with it as best that we can. I want to hear your perspective as we get into this when it comes to the rule of law and accountability to it. And we're saying that we want to end corruption and impunity and all of this. Can we head there with the feeling or the reality that a lot of us feel as though we are above the law? Can we really get there?
Yes, maybe before I answer your question directly, perhaps we need to think of what is the rule of law.
Okay.
And there are two ways of looking at it. The narrow one is everyone is equal before the law. So everyone is under the law. It doesn't matter your status. The second way to look at the rule of law is also probably an aspect that you've mentioned, the issues of accountability. And that's the broader way, issues of democratic values or democratic governance, issues of separation of power, issues of fundamental freedoms that countries, that individual citizens actually enjoy in a country, issues of justice, and all that actually are components of the rule of law.
Yeah.
So yes, but then Because you began by saying there are those who are of the view that it's difficult to end impunity. But then if you look at it in the context of the rule of law, generally what we say is that law actually mirrors society. It mirrors the values of a people. And if people think that we've gotten to a point where we can't, then perhaps we need to think of who we are then as Kenyans. We need to go back and redefine ourselves. Yes.
Okay.
We are inherently corrupt. We are inherently, our value system is challenged, and we make promises we do not deliver.
Yes. And perhaps maybe let me just ask, when we say we make promises we cannot deliver, who are we referring to?
The people who make those promises, and we know that...
So we talk about leadership.
Yes.
Because it rises and falls on leadership. We
Yes.
can say that as well.
Yeah.
But we also need to ask ourselves as Kenyans that where do these leaders come from? From amongst ourselves. The point I'm trying to make, in short, is that we have a problem. And you're saying we are inherently corrupt. If you talk to people now, whether you talk to young people, whether you talk to... Everybody thinks that corruption actually pays in this country. And everyone is looking for an opportunity. Okay, from a general perspective, sometimes it's not good to condemn everybody, but from a general perspective, people think, Kenyans, if they were to be quite honest with you, think that corruption actually pays in this country. And that's why I began by saying, perhaps we need to redefine ourselves and look at our value systems. Because a lot has gone wrong.
But the value system you're talking about is the value system which, if you look at the agencies which try to investigate corruption, especially the anti-corruption and the prosecution and the legal justice, is as broken down as a system that is not even existent, because the people they arrest, and if the media reports the next day, we are charged, because even the reports which they had presented in court are not genuine and not accurate, and there was no clear definition of whether it is corrupt or not.
Yes, but that's the hallmark of a corrupt system. That's what it is. Let's begin from even our education system. You have people who will tell you, young people will tell you that they were given leakage when they were doing KCPE. And who are involved? Their parents,
Yes.
their teachers, and government institutions. For example, you can talk about NEC, because there was a time in this country that corruption was a multi-billion industry.
Yeah.
So this particular individual, a young soul, has been given a leakage. He's passed. He's gone to high school. He's given a leakage.
Yeah.
He comes to university, and probably the same thing. Then this is now the person who is either an MP, minister, president, an official of the anti-corruption, a judge in court, a prosecutor. What do you expect?
Corruption.
And they've come in through a system where from the very beginning,
yes.
it's okay. So, I mean, this is interesting. So if we break it down, that you come in at that point where a decision is made for you, by you, in collaboration with you and your parents, whatever, to buy an exam.
Yes.
To bribe a teacher.
Yes.
At that point, when we talk about, we point fingers usually, isn't it? And we say, well, government is corrupt. Somebody in government has stolen money. Somebody has done that. But at that point, I'm not sure where government is involved when you as a parent or you as a child in collaboration with whomever
The
has
child is
bought an
innocent.
exam
You as a
paper.
parent.
Right?
Yeah.
Government is not there. It's a decision that you've made. You go up in the ranks and you have achieved a result based on an act that was unlawful, right?
Yes.
You have done wrong
Yes.
to achieve that result. So
Yes.
you've risen and you've gone through on a fallacious beginning,
Absolutely.
isn't it? So what are we doing at the end of at the end of the spectrum, at the end of the road, if we've started off on the wrong track?
That's why I began by saying, and I think that we need to redefine ourselves. who are we as a people? Who are we as Kenyans? Who are we as Africans? Because it's easy, like you've said, to say, oh, it's the government not doing this, government not doing that. But what is our role as citizenry? Do we, even when it comes to issues of the rule of law, do we respect those laws ourselves?
Such as what?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Oh, you're asking me to give you an example?
Yes.
Yeah, for example, that's the example. Let's just stick with the education system that I was talking about. If I'm a parent, an ordinary citizen, I give money so that my child can pass his or her exams. I am a teacher who is supposed to be training this child. I'm the one doing exams for them, or helping them to cheat. Okay? Look at our, even the roads, you are talking about the traffic. Do we even obey those small things, like small rules like the traffic rules? Do we have order? Because rule of law is about order. It's about social order in society.
Okay.
Okay? Do we even observe those rules ourselves, traffic rules? You get to know that you go to the you're on the road, the traffic is red, traffic lights red, and then the person just right behind you, when you happen to stop, and that happened to me just yesterday. I'm at the traffic, I've stopped because the lights are red, and what it means is that you stop. The person right behind me is hooting because he thinks I'm delaying. He just wants to go. We don't even observe those small things because the law actually is there to help us. The rule of law is actually doing our work as a people, as a citizenry, social order in society, so that we can able to go about our businesses peacefully, harmonious existence with one another in society. Whether you think about that business in terms of economic activities, whether you think about your social, whether you think about your security, and all that. So the law is there to support us. But the ordinary citizens don't think that they also have a role to play, that the rule of law really does not apply to them.
Do we even think that it's breaking the law? I'm sorry to interject. Do we even think that it's breaking the law? When you're in a line of traffic, for example, and everybody else in front of you be damned, you're going to do one of two things, overlap, or you're going to, cut in the thing. You don't, at that point, we don't think that it's breaking the law. But if we sit down later on and we see, oh my goodness, somebody has been caught with 2 million shillings in their house and that they might be corrupt, in that moment, that's breaking the law. This other thing that we may have been involved in, doesn't compare in any way.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's where the problem begins. I know I'm going to talk, we probably will have a time now to talk about these leaders because they also bear greater responsibility, but they come from society. So the point I'm trying to make is to show that the problem is about the people, the citizenry. We cannot absolve them because the rule of law is about the citizens, the ordinary citizens, and the leaders. It's about the leadership and the people. So what is our role? We are always quick to blame the leaders. Yes, I know, I said it rises and falls on leadership. That's very important, and we cannot run away from that. But what do we do as individuals, citizens? Every time somebody tries to do something right, then it becomes a minority in terms of the public opinion. So look at even the border industry, for example. Do they even obey those traffic rules? Do they even in their mind, if you look at them? And yet when we talk about law, and the rule of law, we say law mirrors society. To what extent are these our values, even when we talk about the rule of law, when we openly disobey them?
So, Daktari, you see, that brings us to then punishment. Because you see, if you disobey the law, there must be punishment.
Yes.
And the punishment must be commensurate to the level of the corruption, for example.
Yes.
The government of Kenya today, we've seen people who've stolen billions in court cases. The fines they are given is a mockery to justice. Because how would a governor steal 1 billion shillings and you still fine him 20 million or 10,000 or 10 million? Yet you know for sure the public resources the person took and invested in private property, land, and you can see where they are, which you can confiscate and return to the government or return to the people, and you don't.
A broken system. A broken system in the sense that, and it's the corruption that we are talking about. It seems to me that even though we are saying that there's equality before the law, humanity seems to me as a quality not shared by all. What do I mean? If I'm powerful, then I'm more favored. The system, whether it's the legal system, favors those who have the money.
Yeah, because
the justice system favors the powerful in society. So we are not equal. In theory, yes, equality before the law is very fundamental because it's one of the hallmarks of the rule of law. Very important. But are we equal? No, we are not. Because if I have money, I'm a governor, for example, the example that you're giving, I am able to pay and interfere with investigations. So that sometimes it's not even about the court. Because the court of law sometimes will have to deal of, not sometimes, but we'll have to look at the facts and the evidence before it. By the time that facts and evidence gets to the court, it's already been altered. What does the court do? Or sometimes, because I'm able to pay to interfere with investigations, as it were, I'm also able to buy justice, as it were, so that I get a favorable. An ordinary person, an ordinary Kenyan who does not have money is not able to. I'll give you another example on that. Last year, when we had protests in this country, the Gen Z's protests, there were summonses that were issued by the court to the then Inspector General of Police. Did he go to court?
No.
7 of them.
Yeah.
He did not appear. Would that so happen to an ordinary citizen?
no.
No, not. And then the court sits, makes a finding, convicts this guy, but then gives him time that if you come and apologize, then we will not. And indeed he went, even after the notice that he was given had expired. And he still went and he was left. He was off the hook. That does not happen to ordinary Kenyans. Today in this country, we have people, ordinary Kenyans, in jail, in prisons, for crimes that they never committed.
Or even if they did, Dr. and I think this is the thing, that when we look at the disparity, then on the social spectrum, this is where we have an issue.
Yes.
The case of a woman who, it lives rent-free in my mind to this date, of a woman who, had a small business next to, of course, it was here on off Thika Road. And she had a paper bag of rubbish. She dumped the paper bag on the side of the road. She was arrested for that. And this is somebody who does not make 1,000 shillings a day. She was arrested for that, and she was asked to pay a fine of 150,000 shillings, failure to which she was going to be locked up. She was locked up, and it took the activities of many people to then put bail together for her, which was, I believe, 20,000 shillings or something to that effect. So, I mean, she was locked up for a couple of days. Mind you, she had a baby on her back in this instant. And bail being paid, she did eventually come out. But the thing was that here you are with this woman who was dumping garbage on the side of the road, and many could argue, well, was there a dustbin anywhere near for her to do that?
No dustbin.
There was no dustbin. Was there a designated garbage dumping site in that area?
Zero.
There was not. So she was going about her business, trying to, make ends meet. And justice was quick, with speed and alacrity. In that moment, she was arrested, quickly thrown into the back of a truck, gone, done. So when you talk about those disparities, and I never want to justify any kind of wrongdoing, but when you look at that disparities, those disparities, you know what? That is why people overlap. That is why people do these things that you would essentially mean petty impunity, because they've seen that the folks who are able to get away with stealing billions can still run for member of parliament and win.
And win.
can still say, I want to be governor, I want to be president, when there is even a whiff of some kind of impunity on your image, you should actually step back. But that doesn't happen. And it's almost as though the law or the situation is encouraging this impunity because it doesn't deal with the ones who have been involved in it to a grand scale.
The law deals with these issues. We are the ones who have elected to disobey the law because the law is there to do our work. It maintains social order, like I said, protect liberty, protect life, property, and all those freedoms that the law affords us. And what therefore, because the law is doing our work, what the law expects of us is to obey. It commands obedience from the citizens. So, and you see, even these things that we call these small things is what actually informs
That's the
how
problem.
we look at things. And that's the
Yes,
problem.
yes.
Because then the police knows that he'll demand a bribe from you because you are going to pay.
Anyway,
You're going to pay. And sometimes we don't even wait for them
you just give them.
to ask us. We pull them aside and we give them. In fact, more times than not, we are the ones who actually put them aside and give them because they're inconveniencing us. We don't want to subject ourselves to the law. We don't want to go to the court. We've been found on the wrongdoing. We don't want to subject ourselves to the law. Yes, we are law subjects, but we do not want to subject ourselves to the law. It does not make any meaning. So for me, I think that's problematic because then and look at even the leaders that we have. What don't we know about them even before they take those positions?
Chapter 6, should we just then abandon it completely?
But yes, and you say it's not to abandon it completely, but is it to what extent is chapter 6 a Kenyan value when we talk about integrity? To what extent? Because we must ask that question and we must find answers for that question. Because when you look around, to what extent would you say that chapter 6 is a value? Is it a constitutional value? Yes, maybe we can say it's a constitutional value, but it's not a Kenyan word. But because when we say that law mirrors society, that law should mirror people's values, who you are as a people, so that when you see something happening, you don't even have to know anything about the law. You don't even have had even to go to you've had to have gone to school, but then you know what he is doing is against our values as a people. He can't do that. And I've seen other countries, people do that. You find somebody who cannot even write, cannot even read. He's saying, no, that's against our values as a people. What that person has done is wrong. He's condemning a public official who has made a mistake, who has gone contrary to the law. Okay. How come that in this country, we do not even care? We have even gone to the extent that if a politician, is accused of or is arrested because of corruption, then we say, he is our son. If he has eaten, then he has eaten on our behalf.
It's our turn to eat.
And we turn these things about communities. So then a community is being targeted, and yet as an individual, I'm being targeted as an individual who has contravened the law. And then the entire community is whipped. And they come and they say, yes, stand with you.
Okay. So we're going back to a corrupted value system, and we're saying that this is the genesis of all of this.
Yes.
So then the question begins, because oftentimes we can talk about how bad the situation is, but we must be solution oriented.
Yes.
Because this thing is eating away at the core of who we are.
Yes.
Whether we're here in Kenya, whether we're across the continent, in the southwest, north, wherever it is, that it's eating away at the very core of who we are. How then do we recalibrate? That's my word for today. I've used it in another conversation, and here it is.
You've used
coming in again.
10 times.
Yeah. So let's come back from this break. Let's take a break and then come back and say, okay, so which way then? Dr. Rogers Otieno Odhiambo is an advocate of the High Court and a law lecturer at the Africa Nazarene University. Ending impunity and corruption, is it possible? Perhaps it is. We'll look into that when we come back from this break at 28 minutes to 10.
Up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up.
Dr. Rogers Otieno Odhiambo is our guest this hour, an advocate of the High Court reporter as well and a lecturer at the Nazarene University. So we talk about these issues of impunity and corruption. They say we want to end them. This is not right. How much money is lost? We've been given figures. Who was arrested? Kind of thing. We look and we said it's across board. But we say this cannot continue anymore and we must be solution-oriented in our discourse. How?
How? A very difficult question. My view is our humanity is at stake. Our humanity as Africans, as Kenyans, is at stake. We no longer care about others. We no longer care about people. We are never mindful about what happens to others so long as I'm able to benefit. That's why if I'm heading the health ministry, I can steal funds meant for medical supplies and people die and it does not affect me. It may not even be about corruption. It may not even be about the respect for the rule of law. It may not even be about impunity. The problem is about our humanity. I think we've lost it, perhaps because of the fact that we were brutalized. But that can also be an excuse by the colonial masters. The state that we inherited from the colonial masters was not designed to help Africans. And that's what we inherited. And therefore, those who occupy those positions do not even care about ordinary citizens. It's about themselves. So, we need to re-examine our humanity so that we can begin now to be mindful of others. Because at some point you thought that you'd imagine that, okay, the church would have the moral compass and ethics to point to the ills that bedevil the society. But the state has co-opted the church. And that's why during national celebrations, these people are given, those medals, those awards that people are given. And that's why every so often, we see them having a meeting in State House. We see MPs being called in State House, and then you also hear that when people go to State House, our leaders, they are given what? Envelopes, whatever that means. So for me, it points to a deeper problem of humanity. We need to know who we are as a people, what challenges we are facing as Kenyans, just here in Kenya and across the world. Then that way, we can be able to redefine ourselves.
There's an allusion to the possibility that when we see what we would call correctly abiding citizens in any nation, that there was something that happened.
Yes.
That made them cross over.
Yes.
That, there could have been, misbehavior along the lines and things were getting really bad. But something happened for that to change. And usually, if you look at the science, if you look at human nature and the study of it, is that there was either a threat to your freedom or the chances that that freedom would be taken away if you continue to behave. What am I saying? That there is a precedent set whereby there is some kind of punishment for wrongdoing. And when you see that, you realize, well, it could be a reset on the brain. And you say, I actually don't want to do that. And it cannot just be the you and me. It's from everybody across the spectrum. That it doesn't matter who you are. You do something that is against the law, you will suffer the consequences for it. And so it sets precedent for others to say, okay, I don't actually want to be caught here. And we find that people who found their way back or have been able to, reset, have had to go through that situation. Is that something that needs to happen? Do we need to see people jailed? Do we need to see that this business of talking to somebody on the side of the road is not going to happen before we change things?
Or we just shoot them?
Like Jerry Rawlings did in Ghana.
In Ghana.
Yeah, you remember there was a time in this country, that was 2003. I remember when the Kibaki came to the Kibaki administration. Ordinary Kenyans even began arresting police, even police themselves. So something happened. I think even by the fact that we are having this conversation, the role that the media is playing, even by having this conversation, the fact that we can sit here and talk about impunity, talk about corruption, for me that's a contribution. But I think this need for a mind shift. We need to have conversations because things are not good. And when things are bad, it's bad for everyone. Okay? So, if you look at even our national anthem, what does it say?
Justice be our shield and defender.
Justice be our shield and defender. Do these things even make sense to us? Do these things even make sense to us? Justice be our shield and defender. Is justice our shield and defender in this country? So, I think that we need to have a conversation. And of course, Kenyans are having a conversation. But we need a critical mass. I thought last year when the youth, the young people of this country, the Gen Zs, started talking and said no to the finance bill, even though the leadership at the time did not listen to them, the MPs, because they were directing their anger to the MPs and saying, please do not pass. They didn't care. And that, in my view, has created some anger, a sense of anger in Kenyans. And what I would wish to see happening is that anger increasing so that we are able to hold these leaders into account. And when we can be able to hold them into account, you see, some of them even ran away. They even switched off their mobile phones because of the anger. Some could not even go to their to their villages because of the anger. So, but the situation has to be so bad. It has to be so bad for that kind of revolution that you are talking about to happen. It's got to be so bad. Maybe we are headed there, maybe not.
Well, I mean, what happens in jurisdictions whereby, we keep using, and look at what we do often. We use the Southeast nations as examples of how economies are able to do so well. But do you know what those same economies do? They jail corrupt presidents.
Yes.
Not corrupt people walking along the side of the street. They send them to jail.
To jail, yes.
For significant years because of things that they did while they were in office.
Yes.
Look at Korea when you want to talk about, it's so great because they're one of the Asian tigers. Guess what they do? They send former presidents to jail for things that they have done. Look at Brazil, one of the upcoming economies in the world, who has sent a former president to jail for what they did. Members of government will not be caught with their pants down, because they realize, hang on a minute, this thing that we call the law is serious. Is that not what needs to happen for us to take this thing seriously?
Yeah, that needs to happen, but that's not going to happen until we understand who we are as a people. Because if you arrest me, assuming I was holding a public, maybe a member of parliament, for example, from my constituency, or I'm a cabinet secretary, for example, you arrest me and you send me to jail, then it's about my community. It's about where I come from.
You're targeting us.
You're targeting us.
Okay.
And they whip the emotions of a
So
community.
we whip them, and that has happened all the time. And then we see people demonstrating. See, our community is being targeted, or they don't like us. We are not wanted as a people. And that, of course, also poses challenge. But I'm not saying that it should not happen. It should happen. But how is it that we have no regard? Because even us, we also have laws that should send people to jail. How come we are not doing it?
The Gen Z.
So I think we need to get, the situation needs to be so bad. It's bad, but it needs to be so bad so that we can have a critical mass. I want to see a situation where people in Mombasa, people in Kisumu, people in Northeastern, people everywhere is speaking with one voice, as it almost happened in June of last year.
But it's
where
not
people speaking in one voice. But where are we now?
But
We
Terry,
went back.
is it impossible though? Is it impossible? If CT were here, he would remind you of a time. In fact, by the way, CT normally says, we like our corruption. We like it because if we didn't like it, we wouldn't practice it the way that we, this impunity, we enjoy it.
Yes.
CT reminds us of a time where the nation banded together during the time when John Mishuki said, you see this misbehavior that we see on the roads with public service, it ends today.
Yes.
People were ready to walk to change the status quo.
Yes.
People said we will wear seatbelts. People said we will do what? We will do it if we have somebody who is pointing us in that direction.
Yes.
We will abandon this bad behavior and we will abandon the people who are perpetuating it. So it's not impossible. Such things can actually happen. But there doesn't then need to be somebody who's going to stir the waters, as it were.
But who is this somebody?
Well, I mean,
Are you telling me that in Kenya, we do not have people who can actually stir the waters, as it were? Do people want to elect these people? Are you telling me, because I don't believe that we do not have good leaders in this country. And let us just look at the kind of leadership, the kind of leaders that we end up with. And people know
Let's look at
where
that.
I come from. If you are running for
MCA
to be a
even.
member of parliament, for example, I've had cases where people say, hey, so-and-so is very good and actually means well. And I think he can actually help us, but he doesn't have money. So whose problem is it? This thing is more complex than we think. Because if Mishuki, the late Mishuki, may his soul rest in peace, showed us the direction, and we thought we almost got there, how come we are back? How come we were worse than we were before?
Isn't that human nature, though? Look at even
Yeah,
in
if
time
there's a vacuum.
immemorial. Look at even when the Israelites were leaving Egypt. Let's use as an example. Moses led them. Moses went to the mountain for a moment. Okay, not a moment. It was said to be a very
was a
long,
long time.
Yes.
He went to the mountain to pray and come back with. By the time he came down, the same people that he had led out were doing things. They were rubbishing all over the place. Is it not the nature of human beings that you need somebody who will corral you, even if you have a feeling of the right way to go in your mind? And that's where, in my mind, the element of benevolent dictatorship comes into play. You need somebody to whip you into action. Otherwise, left to your own vices, you'll do rubbish.
I also think, I agree with you absolutely, but I also think that we need perhaps an education system that would impact or inculcate what do we call it? Patriotism.
Values.
Patriotism as a value.
Okay.
We talk about it, it's one of the values in the Constitution, but then we do not reflect it as a people. So we have to love our countries enough to stop doing some of this. Look at the Chinese, for example. China, a few years ago, about 30, 40 years ago, sat down and became and decided on agenda for the Chinese people. And they said that by 2020, we need to have 20 million Chinese in Africa, permanent residents, because we have no space in China. But when you go there, when you go to the African continent, don't trust their banking system.
Bank your money back here.
Back your money back here to make life more meaningful for the Chinese people in China. It takes a different kind of mindset to deal with this kind of things that we are talking about. Look at UK, for example. If you are running for a political position, you want to become a prime minister, and you fail, you give space for the next person. It's not because the law says that you've got to do so.
You just let someone else.
You let, because I failed, I did not deliver, I am going. Again, if look at this guy, what is his name? The guy who led the no campaign during the Brexit. The former Prime Minister, David
Cameron.
David Cameron. He did not want UK to leave the European Union.
European Union.
He was the Prime Minister at the time. His side did not win. He led a no campaign. What did he do? He left.
resigned.
Look at Theresa May. He made promises during the campaigns. When she got to power, she said, I realized that I could not be able to do what? To fulfill the promises that I made to the British people. So my position is not tenable. I have to do what? I have to leave. In the UK, again, talking about the rule of law, Boris Johnson was during the COVID period. The rule was that you cannot hold, you cannot gather. Then he held a private party. What happened? He had to leave. Can that happen in Kenya? Can that happen in Africa?
Over my dead body. I believe somebody even
So
said
there's
it.
something wrong. And that's why I am insisting. It's not even about, we have enough laws in this country, if you ask me. We have enough laws in this country. It's not that we do not have laws. It's not that we do not have laws. We do. But it's only that we do not regard those laws that we have. And that's why, for me, I think that we need to go back to deal with our humanity issues. Let me ask you a question, and that's why I'm also talking about patriotism. If, say, after this show, your cell phone develops a problem, and you walked out of this building, and you find, say, 2 white technicians, 7 black technicians, and, say, 4 Indian technicians, where would you take your phone for the service?
An Indian technician.
Why not a Kenyan? And majority of people will actually queue waiting for the white technicians to sort them, or Indian technicians, but not Kenyan technicians. Why? Okay, why Indians?
Because Indians have that. If you look at the development area in that phone, they have really come up with that.
And they've made it known.
So why are we saying so? It's because, again, there are issues that we have as a
Mistrust.
people.
Our mistrust is quite
Number
high.
one,
Yeah.
issue of mistrust, issue of hate. We don't, and issues of pity. We don't even think that we are good enough, that we can do anything. And that's why today, you go to the treasury, you find advisors, white people coming to advise government on how to reform
their money
economy.
and defend.
You go to various ministries, you have white people as consultants, because we do not think that we are good enough to do anything on our own. How do you expect somebody who has inherent hate for you to help you how to do things?
No. So when you're talking about that critical mass, let me take you back to that critical mass of Gen Zs. If you go to the city center nowadays, you'll find so many young people who have nothing to do. And I think if you look at the way societies change and that social structure, is that this mass of people will actually come to force people who are formulating these laws to make laws which can make them get employment and work. So I think that if you are looking at that critical mass, I think it is developing. There are many people out there are questioning, and the social media and the networks are there. People are talking.
Yes.
I think what we don't have is a skill set to push it to the next level and tell the government, the way we did with the finance bill, you either shape up or ship out.
Yes, and perhaps we need to talk more. We need to have those kind of conversations. And that way we will come to a situation where we can say, yes, who are we then? Who are we? What do we want? What challenges are we facing? How then do we address these issues? So conversation, yes. But would you say, even from what you are describing, would you say that we are there yet?
You know, even as you say this, and I'm just looking down at something here, is the realization that over time, we've seen countries have had to craft. The same China that you talk about came from a place where poverty was unbelievable.
Yes.
That it was abject then they could see easily that hundreds of millions of people were going to plunge into, and they said, and this is the thing, that they said, you know what, and it was not just one person. It was a community of leaders who essentially put one person up in terms of the party and said, you know what, if we continue in this manner, we will die. And one thing that we must do, we have the people, we have the resources, we look insular, we come up with plans and we stick to them. And this is what I'm saying, that it must take, and I think that at some point, you can force a situation whereby you can revalue things. Can you not? Because if we wait for
Yes.
people to make the decision on their own to say, well, okay, maybe next year I'll start to value my Africanness or start to value my Kenyanness or my Nigerianness or whatever, it is never going to happen.
I agree with you
Unless it's
absolutely.
inherent.
Yes, I agree with you absolutely. Because even the Chinese, like we say, they had to sit down so that they redefine themselves. And actually for Chinese, members of political bureau, they are just about 7 men who decided that we needed to know who we are as a people and what challenges we are facing in China and in the world, and how to overcome them, those challenges. And then came up with a blueprint. What's happening for us? China has an agenda for Africa. Africa does not even have an agenda for herself. And that's why China can even call African leaders in China to go and attend a conference there. And all our leaders rushed there to China. You saw, was it last year or was it early this year? Last year. Leaders went to China.
It was this year.
It was this year, yes. Leaders went to China because China has an agenda for Africa. They sat down and said, we are going to get there. How are we going to do that? How are we going to get there? Let us renovate their AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. Let us renovate their state houses. Let us do all these things. Let's give their children scholarships, and the children of the politicians given scholarships to go to China. They have an agenda. We do not even have an agenda for ourselves. And we have actually failed also to put these leaders to account.
What does it mean?
And when you talk to young people, I get an opportunity to interact with them a number of times. Sadly, you know what they tell me? Corruption pays. I think I've said that. They see and they tell me, sir, we have people even bought jobs because they were able to pay for them. They wanted to join the army, they paid money. They wanted to join the police, they paid money. So corruption pays. Don't tell us that corruption doesn't pay. What we are opposed to is opulence.
But if they are paying to get the position they are paying to get, and we are saying that they are rejecting opulence, but opulence starts from employment.
Yes.
So I think if the young people that are not being honest, I think we have to be very truthful with ourselves and agree that if it's corruption, we end it. If it's that opulence, we end it. If it is getting even shortcuts to employment, should not be allowed.
Yes. So, and that's why I'm saying it takes a different kind of thinking. Because how then do you convince this person that corruption is bad, and then they're telling you it pays, and they've seen the benefits of corruption. They paid for it, and they were given leakages in KCPE, leakage in KCSEs. They have had shortcuts and passed their exams. They have bought jobs, and they can give you examples of people they know. And then they're telling you that the government cannot employ all of us. So if I know you, you'll do me a favor. If I'm able to buy, so it pays. And what we don't want, we know, even during the protest, after the protest, we're having a conversation. And then what they're saying is that we know that corruption is there in this country, and we don't have a problem with that. What we have a problem with is the opulence. Don't show us that you are corrupt and all that. You see, the problem also about this corruption thing is that we have a tendency, and the late Professor Ali Mazrui actually talked about it, that in Africa, we have this tendency of borrowing things that we can't even put to use. We have the tendency of acquiring wealth overnight, but we do not even have the capacity to produce the same wealth. Okay? We have the tendency in Africa of even wearing those very expensive watches, but we cannot even have the capacity to watch the watch to know what time it is. We don't even know what time it is in Kenya, in Africa.
You're wearing Patek and you don't know the price of Patek.
You're wearing Rolex, but you don't even know. The things that we show off our wealth, but we cannot produce the same wealth.
I think those things that you've said, those things that you've mentioned, and those are the elements that will we need to grind them.
Yes.
parents would often say, we'll tell you the things that you don't want to hear in order to make you so uncomfortable that you will either change or die. It really is up to you. And I have to say that it's good to hear these things, and we need to keep these conversations front and center. And we're looking forward to a time where you can come back to keep these conversations front and center. Dr. Rogers Ichenio Odhiambo is an advocate of the High Court and a lecturer at the African Nazarene University. We've been talking serious things this morning, necessary for us to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here this morning. Charles?
Yeah.
We'll do it again.
We do this again and again.
And again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Good morning. It's 10 a.m.